every one of our campuses is very much aware of the debt load, as President Smith said, on our students at this time. Access is our primary mission. It's part of everything we do. We really want to understand how more people in the state of New York, traditional age students and non-traditional students, can access the public higher education credential that will take them into contributing more to the state of New York. So we're not looking to exclude people by this exponential rise in tuition. We're looking to set tuition at on a rational basis for both our families and for the programs. We also want to respond to new programs and new technologies in ways. Certainly tuition is more important for comprehensive campuses. We need those dollars to stay on campus, to be reinvested on campus. Many parts of this act will act together, some of it taking us off of the state budget so that we don't have to suffer those mid-year calamities because they are tied to the fiscal realities of the state of New York, but also then with the tuition so that when we don't have to suffer that tuition can stay on campus and really go to the benefit of the programs that are affecting our students.
I think one of the things, too, about the increase in the number of faculty, we at ESF are meeting the educational needs of approximately 300 or 400 students over the last 5 years, an increase of that number, and yet we fundamentally have had no increase in the number of faculty. And I think to maintain the quality of our programs, we need to have that investment in faculty. It's for the benefit of the student, it's for the benefit of the parents. And when you think about the overall cost for that investment, frankly, that really makes sense. It's a very cost-effective way to go.
And it really does become more difficult because of the Great Recession. The demand on higher ed, public higher ed, is at an all-time high at all our campuses. I'll mention mine, for example. We will hit close to 13,000 applications for 1,075 openings in the freshman class. Where are those students supposed to go? At Oswego, at our community colleges, at our technical colleges. It is a very difficult situation. With additional dollars, we could have greater access. And at this point, we have to turn those people away. It's a difficult time, and we realize that. We're all willing to help together. But having the ability through this bill does give us some flexibility and allow more students to come to my campus.
I think that before we leave your question, I don't think there's a quid pro quo. If we gain dollars in tuition, we're going to be using those to add these staff. If you look at this, most of these jobs will be added because of research or money we bring into the state from other sources that we're unable to go after or we're too slow to go after it today. The other thing that I think is important, we're very open to, and you will see within the bill, restrictions on how that tuition is to be set and established. It's not just an arbitrary act or something that each of us do. It's a carefully defined process. So from our perspective, the setting of tuition and the way it's handled is going to be as controlled, if not more controlled, under this bill than it has been in the past. However, it will be in the hands of the board as opposed to the legislative process, as my colleague Deborah Stanley mentioned earlier.
So you wouldn't expect a vast difference in tuition, let's say, between some of the more competitive schools and some of the less competitive schools?
I suspect there will be some schools that will reduce their tuition.
As far as the land goes, are there some that suggest it's a state land, so the money should go into state coffers? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll comment. It actually is, and I mean, that is also one of the beauties of this. In our case, when we bring land into the inventory, and in our case, there was a net increase. I think many of you are aware. Kennedy Square is caught up in this, but it was transferred from the state to a state entity. But with the expectations that 9 acres would be developed with high density, new urbanism, that is being caught up in the current red tape, and yet the expectation of the use of that land was that it would be used to revitalize a very vital part of this community. And it has been transferred from a state trust to a state trust. But the problem is, because of our inflexibility of current capability, it has to go through a process that includes a lease approval at the board, a legislative process and approval to allow a lease, and then, of course, when you go out to bid and contract, it goes through the comptroller, the AG's office, and then ultimately you're to award a contract. No one in the private sector who would have to want to be your partner wants to go through that. This is not even, in our case, the use of existing state trust lands. We would love to have more land. We're pretty gridlocked. Same is true when we try to bring on other properties like Townsend and Harrison, which we're doing as we speak. So what it's not anticipating is the fact that these campuses are vibrant, growing, and looking at new ways to do business, and we're stuck with the bureaucracy that has existed for 50 years.
Because of the difficulties in acquiring land and leasing land, we at ESF, I think, are the only doctoral granting institution that never had a residence hall for students. We've had to use our ESF College Foundation to go out and acquire, now we've acquired almost 30 individual pieces of property in order to gain access to the land. Rather than it being a state investment, it winds up being an investment that our ESF College Foundation has undertaken. We think that all of this issue with either acquisition or leasing of land can be much more streamlined and much more effective if we have this legislation.
If you talk about more rural campuses that are really embedded in their communities, use of their land, often land that's not being used for educational purposes at one particular time, can be used for the benefit of the communities, whether it's athletic facilities or senior housing. And we have had ample examples over the last couple of years exactly that it's been difficult to do, to the extent that some campuses have abandoned those projects.
I think some of the jobs mentioned here, not that many, but sizable number, are a reflection of the potential and the information they accumulated. For instance, on my campus, I had a company 2 years ago that wanted to actually come in and set up a business in partnership, a public-private partnership on my campus on land that we were not using. It would have been impossible to do that, but they would have brought about 23 to 25 jobs. It was just an impossible thing to do. It would have been great for us because it would have added immensely to our laboratory equipment, would have allowed us to do a lot of things, and it would have been a great move forward. Right now, that's almost impossible to do, unless we do it off campus on private property.
Just also to your point, because I think it is an important one to emphasize, is that this isn't going to be 64 independent campuses making these determinations, whether it's land use, private-public partnerships, whatever that may be, or tuition. It really is the strength and the breadth of the entire SUNY system and the Board of Trustees who are appointed and the controls that already exist within SUNY. Right now, there's so many different layers, it frustrates people from even getting out of the blocks and even asking the question on the front end. But this will not be 64 fiefdoms independently making these decisions. It really will be the biggest public health system, the largest public higher ed system in the United States making those decisions.
That's a powerful engine, and I think that's the point of all of this, is unleashing SUNY to go forward in all of these different aspects.